I sat at my sleek mahogany desk, the sunlight spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my apartment, catching the silk of my blouse and glinting off the polished chrome of my laptop. The city hummed beneath me, taxi horns, distant construction, the occasional bark of a dog, but all of it felt muted, filtered through my own bubble of calm control. My phone buzzed, breaking the quiet. I picked it up, expecting another routine work message, but instead, it was a video call from my family. My chest tightened. It was always the same, subtle barbs, condescending laughter, a way of reminding me of my place, even now, after everything I'd built. And then there was him, my nephew, grinning like he knew some secret I didn't. The very idea of that boy judging me sent a flush of irritation through my veins. I could feel the tension in my shoulders, the sharp edge of my nail against the polished desk, and I reminded myself to breathe. They had no idea what I had done since leaving their narrow expectations behind. No idea that the woman they saw as their failed, overextended niece was now the one controlling fortunes, making decisions that affected thousands, including a certain $80,000 gift they assumed was untouchable. I smiled faintly, a mix of irony and quiet satisfaction curling in my chest. Today, they were about to find out just how wrong they had been. I was 19, fresh out of college, and full of hope that my family would finally see me. Not the version of me they mocked, but the real me, ambitious and determined. I remember walking into the living room for my nephew's birthday, holding a carefully wrapped box, my hands trembling slightly from excitement and nerves. I had spent weeks finding the perfect gift, something meaningful, something that would show I cared. The moment he tore the paper off, his face twisted into a sneer. "This is it," he said, holding the gift at arm's length as if it were a contagion. The laughter that followed from my cousins and even my own parents hit me like a punch to the stomach. My throat constricted, my fingers curled around the edge of the box, knuckles white. I wanted to disappear, to vanish into some corner where no one could see how much this hurt. I remember my grandmother's voice, gentle but firm, echoing in my memory. "Don't let anyone diminish your value. What you give comes from your heart. That's what matters." I clutched the little charm she had given me when I left for college, a tiny gold token shaped like a key. She had told me, "This is your reminder that the doors you open are yours alone." In that moment, as the room filled with laughter at my expense, I realized something crucial. They didn't get to define me. Their insults, their mockery, they were their problem, not mine. I excused myself quietly, the box still in my hands, and stepped outside into the crisp evening air. The city lights flickered in the distance, and with each step, I felt a spark of determination. I would prove, not to them, but to myself, that my worth wasn't tied to their approval. That night, under the glow of streetlights, I made a decision. I was done being small in their eyes. It was time to build something for myself. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. My grandmother's charm stayed tucked in my wallet, a small but constant reminder that my future was mine to create. I moved across state lines, taking a tiny studio apartment where the peeling paint and drafty windows were a small price to pay for freedom. I took every odd job I could find, assistant positions, freelance projects, anything that allowed me to learn, grow, and stretch my wings without anyone's judgment hovering over me. It was exhausting. Some nights, I lay on the lumpy couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever reach the life I dreamed of. The self-doubt was relentless, whispering that I wasn't enough, that they were right to dismiss me. But then, little victories began to pile up. I landed my first client, a small but reputable company willing to trust me with their marketing campaign. The paycheck wasn't life-changing, but it felt monumental. Each success, no matter how tiny, built a scaffolding of confidence I hadn't realized I was capable of holding. Along the way, I met a mentor, Clara, a seasoned woman in the field who immediately saw something in me. She challenged me, pushed me past comfort zones, and never let me settle for mediocrity. "You're capable of more than you think," she'd say, adjusting her glasses with that unmistakable calm authority. She taught me to negotiate, to speak up, to value my skills, Not just for money, but for the respect that comes from competence. I remember the late nights, the coffee-stained notebooks, and the stack of rejection emails I eventually turned into lessons. I became adept at spotting opportunity, taking calculated risks, and building relationships that mattered. I learned how to scale, how to manage, and eventually, how to invest wisely. The small savings I'd squirreled away, along with some strategic investments, snowballed quietly. No Facebook posts, no family updates. I stayed under their radar, hiding in plain sight, letting my success accumulate like a secret garden. By the time they assumed I was still scraping by, I had a thriving business, a portfolio of clients, and financial independence I hadn't dared to dream of at 19. And most importantly, I held control over my own destiny and over a certain $80,000 gift that they never took seriously. Every step I'd taken, every sacrifice, every sleepless night had led me here. And the irony? The same nephew who had mocked my gifts would soon realize that the woman he underestimated was now untouchable in ways he never imagined. The invitation came casually enough, a group text from my sister. Family dinner tonight. Don't forget to bring your nephew. He's dying to see you. My stomach tightened, a familiar cocktail of nerves and anticipation swirling through me. I had spent years preparing for this moment, quietly building my empire, learning, investing, thriving, while they assumed I was still the same struggling girl they had ridiculed. Tonight, I would correct that assumption. The restaurant was as elegant as they had hoped, chandeliers glinting above linen-draped tables, soft music weaving through polite chatter. I arrived last, letting them chatter without interruption, letting the subtle tension rise before I entered their line of sight. When I finally stepped into the private dining room, I felt their eyes on me. The nephew's smirk faltering as recognition hit, then confusion, and finally disbelief. I took my seat, deliberately graceful, my silk blouse gleaming under the warm lighting. Around me, the table was a microcosm of expectation. My family, expecting humility, expected self-deprecation, expected me to stumble. Instead, they found the woman who had quietly rewritten the rules. My gaze swept over the room. Expensive leather-bound portfolios rested against my chair. A small tablet displayed real-time metrics of my business. Subtle cues of success I had carefully curated so they could see it, but not fully grasp it until I spoke. "Hello, everyone," I began, my voice steady smooth. "It's been a while, hasn't it?" I let a faint smile linger, just enough to draw them in before delivering the truth. "You probably think I've been struggling, scraping by, maybe even relying on handouts. That assumption is incorrect." I slid a small folder across the table toward my nephew. "This," I said softly, "is your college fund." He blinked, incredulous. "Do you know how much is in here?" I allowed a pause, letting the tension thicken. $80,000. And it's been under my management because after the way you dismissed my gifts, I realized I should control the future you take for granted." The room went silent. I could feel the weight of their shock, the disbelief, the shame. Their eyes darted between me and the documents, then to each other. I continued, letting the words land with deliberate calm. "I've built a life that you assumed I couldn't. I've made choices, worked hard, invested wisely. The girl you laughed at, she's gone. She's replaced by someone who commands respect, not just from the world, but from herself." My nephew's face turned pale, his earlier bravado evaporating into a mix of guilt and awe. My parents exchanged glances, the realization settling in. The niece they had underestimated was now untouchable, her decisions decisive, her worth undeniable. And the very gift they assumed was safe, the college fund, was now a testament to how seriously I take value, respect, and, above all, self-worth. For the first time, I saw them see me, really see me. And in that moment, I felt a surge of power, calm, precise, and entirely mine. The silence at the table was almost sacred, each second thick with realization. They had expected meekness. They got authority. I leaned back slightly, letting the weight of my presence fill the room. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect, fairness, and establishing boundaries that should have existed long ago. "I'm not here to punish," I began, keeping my tone calm, measured. "But I am here to make clear what will happen next, if any of us wants this relationship to continue on healthier terms." Their eyes widened, unsure whether to be relieved or terrified. "First," I said, looking directly at my nephew, "the college fund is not a free ride. If you want access to it, there are conditions. You must apply yourself, show initiative, and prove that you value your education. Laziness, entitlement, or disrespect will mean it stays in my control." His jaw tightened, but I saw the spark of understanding in his eyes. Turning to my parents, I continued, "You will respect boundaries. No more belittling, no more comparisons, and no more assumptions about my life. You will recognize my choices and accomplishments, and you will support the family in ways that don't tear each other down." My mother's lips pressed together. My father's eyes betrayed a mixture of shame and admiration. Then I set one final condition for all of them: personal growth. Each of you must pursue something meaningful for yourselves, whether it's education, career, or passion projects. You will demonstrate responsibility and accountability. This is not just about money. It's about rebuilding trust and learning that relationships thrive when they're nurtured, not controlled by fear or judgment. I saw the hesitation, the struggle to absorb my words, but I didn't flinch. I wanted them to feel the weight of their past actions while understanding that I wasn't closing the door. I was simply stepping into my power. Compassion mingled with firmness. This was not cruelty. This was guidance. I cared enough to give them structure, but not enough to let them continue old patterns that had harmed me for years. By the time dessert arrived, the tone had shifted. There was a tentative respect in their gestures, a subtle acknowledgement that I was no longer the girl they could dismiss. The power dynamic had changed, but the atmosphere wasn't toxic. It was alive with possibility. For the first time, they were seeing me not as a niece to be pitted or laughed at, but as a woman capable of shaping her own destiny and demanding the respect she had earned. Months passed, and I watched subtle changes unfold. My nephew began showing initiative, genuinely engaging with his studies, seeking advice, and even expressing gratitude, not just for the fund, but for the opportunity to prove himself. It was satisfying in a way that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with growth. My parents started to shift too. Conversations became less about judgment and more about curiosity, about who I was, what I had built, and what I had learned along the way. I noticed the small gestures: my mother asking for my opinion on her work, my father genuinely celebrating my wins without the slightest condescension. The power balance hadn't disappeared. It had transformed into mutual respect, a recognition that boundaries, when respected, could strengthen relationships rather than weaken them. One evening, I sat in my office, the charm my grandmother had given me resting on the desk. I picked it up, turning it over in my fingers, and smiled. It wasn't just a reminder of where I came from. It was a symbol of the choices I had made, the resilience I had cultivated, and the woman I had become. That little key had unlocked more than opportunity. It had unlocked self-respect, vision, and a life I could claim fully for myself. I reflected on the journey. The sting of mockery, the late nights of doubt, the painstaking effort to rise quietly and strategically. Every moment had led me here, and every insult, every misjudgment, had strengthened my resolve rather than diminished it. I realized that true empowerment isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you are enough, that your worth is undeniable, and that your boundaries are sacred. I placed the charm back on the desk, letting it catch the light, and whispered to myself, almost as if speaking to my younger self, "I am the gift I always deserved, and no one can take that away." Bottom of form.